We got a lot. You know, when they let, I think the real number is 15, 16 million people into our country. When they do that, we got a lot of work to do. They're poisoning the blood of our country. We have no idea who any of them are. They come from Africa. They come from Asia. They come from South America. And it's true. They're destroying the blood of our country. That's what they're doing. They're destroying our country. They don't like it when I said that. And I never read Mein Kampf. They said, oh, Hitler said that in a much different way. No, they're coming from all over the world, people all over the world. We have no idea. They could be healthy. They could be very unhealthy. They could bring in disease that's going to catch on in our country. But they do bring in crime. But they have them coming from all over the world. And they're destroying the blood of our country. They're destroying the fabric of our country. And we're going to have to get them out.
So a couple of quick corrections here. By the way, that is rhetoric. That is eerily reminiscent of what Adolf Hitler said. Donald Trump said he never read Mein Kampf. Perhaps he never read Mein Kampf. I don't know. I do know that Ivana Trump said that he kept a book of Hitler's speeches by his bedside. Told Vanity Fair that. So maybe it's not Mein Kampf, but he's certainly channeling that book that Ivana Trump said he kept by his bedside. That was some of Donald Trump's worst rhetoric lately. And, of course, there's quite a hearty competition for the worst things that he's been saying recently. But that was some. And this is some of Donald Trump's 2024 opponents who are lobbing mild criticisms at Trump for his repeated fascist rhetoric, talking about migrants poisoning the blood of our country. In an interview released yesterday by the Christian Broadcasting Network, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said this.
When you start talking about using those types of terms, I don't think that helps us move the ball forward. I would not put it in those terms.
A former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley gave a similar response, telling the Des Moines Register yesterday that Trump's remark was, quote, just not helpful. Compare that to former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, who in a CNN interview Sunday called Donald Trump's, quote, disgusting for the comments and said he was dog whistling to Americans. I don't know that it's a dog whistle as much as a foghorn. When you're quoting Hitler, I think we've moved beyond the dog whistling stage. More than dogs can hear Hitler rhetoric. And here is what former Trump Attorney General Bill Barr had to say yesterday about it.
I'm offended by it because it has racist overtones. I actually feel, as you say, we have to control the border, and a lot of people coming across the border from anywhere in the world, we don't know where they're coming from. But at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is that the Hispanic Americans that have come up from South America have made great citizens. You know, they have strong values, they're entrepreneurial. My son-in-law was a Marine combat officer, and he said the best Marines in his unit in Iraq were recent Hispanic immigrants. So I don't like these racist overtones. In the broad sweep of history, the fact that we have a reservoir to our south of these people who come out of the Western tradition, they're religious people, good family people in general, is a boon to the United States. Does that mean they all are like that? No. And does bringing in a lot of people at once from a different country, does that put strains on our system and harm the country to an extent? Yes, it does. But the attacks on the idea that they pollute our blood, I think are foul.
Yeah, you know who he sounds a lot like is Ronald Reagan. I know that Trump Republicans probably don't understand that because they probably don't read Ronald Reagan, what Ronald Reagan said, or ever listen to what Ronald Reagan used to say. But that's exactly what Reagan said. In fact, he said it in his farewell address to Americans, how important immigrants are to the core of this country. I'm so glad also he brought up the fact that Hispanic Americans are some of the bravest, some of the toughest, some of the best fighters that we have in uniform. And I've heard that time and again. So it is interesting, Susan Page, while some of the condemnations may not have been as full-throated as some would like, It is interesting that most Republicans now do feel comfortable, at least these presidential candidates, in at least condemning him for what Bill Barr said was foul language.
I don't know if I would give them that much credit. Nikki Haley, the child of immigrants, she just says they're not helpful. I mean, these are dehumanizing comments with a fascistic history, poisoning the blood of our country. Earlier, former President Trump had referred to them as vermin. This is language we know something about in not so long ago of our history. So how can it not be denounced in a really full-throated way? Why are the candidates who most want to replace him as the Republican nominee not calling this out in a more serious way? It says something about the state of the Republican Party and the hold that Trump continues to have on its voters.
Well, and to me, it's, it says something about the sort of centrality of immigration and fears of immigration in Trump's appeal. I mean, this has been the sort of bedrock principle of Trumpism from the get-go, starting with the Muslim ban to the attacks on justices over their nationality. And I don't know, Mark, you followed the guy for a while. I'm kind of curious biographically, like prior to his political days, where does this come from? What has informed his thinking on this? Or is this all sort of a plain, crass political calculation that you think he's making?
I mean, I think both. I mean, first of all, two of his 3 wives were immigrants.
Right.
I guess.
Although that's not that that tends to happen sometimes, where you have a familial connection to an immigrant and you just say things that are blatantly anti-immigrant. But anyway, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
That is true. No, I think there's obviously a political calculation. I think there's a visceral calculation here. I think it also, he kind of comes up from a world of ethnic politics and ethnic friction. I mean, that's kind of the whole melting pot of New York, and it's often, very vibrant and very dynamic, but it also can be turned on its head, and it can be an incredibly divisive notion that can be used quite cynically. So, I don't know. I would just say that it would not kill me never to hear the expression, "that's not helpful," again, from politicians. I mean, the idea that everything must be helpful. And you're right, though. I do think it goes to the level of passivity that is the anti-Trump resistance in the Republican Party, which has frankly been abysmal, as we've all said.
Well, and Mike Barnicle, Susan Page brings up a great point. For Nikki Haley to just say it's not helpful when she is the daughter of immigrants, somebody that has seen firsthand the American dream and seen how important immigrants are to the American dream. Just like Donald Trump's mom was an immigrant, just like 2 of Donald Trump's 3 wives were immigrants, just like Nikki Haley's parents were immigrants. I mean, we have, just like people who have made and remade Silicon Valley are immigrants. We can go down the list of people who we see on TV, people who impact our world, people who make America stronger and more vibrant, in the words of Ronald Reagan. And they're immigrants. So I take Susan's point. Not helpful is not helpful.